But this is the first piece that I did. I don't remember who all worked on it. I remember Buster Simpson. So this was the first year, 1971, right where the propane tanks were. Are they still there, Benny?
No,
they're not there. So how do you? It's right by the driveway going up to the back of the hot shop, right?
Right. Kind of in between, right below the artist in residence studio.
Right below the artist in residence studio, there was a pond that looked, I don't know how big it was, 30 or 40 feet maybe. And so we blew these pieces and put them in the pond. And there aren't a lot of slides of too many of the pieces we did in those early years because we were really sort of flat out trying to build the school. Now we're at 1971, and that's Jamie Carpenter and myself. At the very beginning, this is right where the hot shop is now. That's where we built the first hot shop. Next. And there the first hot shop is going up. We built this hot shop, next, in 14 days from start to finish. There's the White Eagle and John Landon building the first bench, all right, which was what was it, the Swan? I think we call it the Swan. And I just happened to see that tree down along there, if you're going down the road where the cows are on the left, if they're still there. And I will have to admit, I cut that tree down to make this bench. And next slide. And there's Landon, a quintessential slide from 1971 to give you the idea of the cuisine and the manner in which we ate. Do note the second jackknife in his hand next to the machete, which probably allowed him to cut the meat. And John was one of the formidable builders of Pilchuck in those first few years especially. I like to show this to prove that I actually had something to do with building this. That's me on the left in the blue sweater. And it did rain, by the way, every single one of the 14 days. Because that was June, and June can be a very rainy month. Next slide. And as the story goes, everybody that came, there were I think 14 or 16 students, everybody built their own house. So let's go through these quickly. Jamie's house, next. Inside of Jamie's house, Jamie and Barbara's next. Bob Sestock, wasn't it? I think no, it wasn't Bob Sestock. Somebody had this parachute. Next slide. I know who it was, I can't think of his name. Buster's treehouse, I think he built this the second year. Buster Simpson is a very well-known artist, lives in Seattle, for those of you that don't know Buster. Next slide. My first house, which I didn't build till the second year, because the first year I lived in my van. I just didn't have time to build a joint. But this house I was always proud of. My house went to Pike, the artistic director, as you know. But this is the exact spot that Pike's house is on. And this house was made out of 8 windows only, and made in one day. And then this was the updated model in its prime, I guess, with the steps that go up there. I'm sure many of you have been up to Pike's house. Next slide. Landon's teepee. Landon, we worked together at the Rhode Island School of Design in 69, 70, and I picked John up on the way out. He was living on an island and in Montana. Next slide. There's Landon again building the, what do you call it, food cache, which just only recently deteriorated. If you can believe, this thing lasted 25 years it stood. The food cache, of course, was meant to put the food up there so the bears wouldn't get it, or whatever we thought was around at the time. And that's Pete Robinson and can't remember his partner's name at the time, but they were actually living in this tree stump, which is right up above where what do you call them, the cottages? What are they? The student cottages. I don't know, that tree must still be there, but it's probably half gone. I mean, another half gone. But it was big enough to live in. They actually lived inside it. Next slide. There's Landon and Michael Nero making the marvering table. See the piece of steel down below there? And that went up, and that formed the marvering table. Next slide. And that's, there's Michael again. And next slide. I wonder who that is. That's Klaus and his daughter. About what year would that be, Klaus? Are you in here?
Yes, I am.
20 years ago?
79.
79. 21 years ago. Lino, the probably early on too, Benny. When would that be?
79 as well.
79 as well. So I only saw a few slides in the rack that I pulled out of early faculty, but I just picked a couple. Next slide. Benny is the one that, if you didn't know, that brought Lino here originally because they were good friends. We wanted to start bringing in faculty from around the world, as we always did, but Benny had the connection. And this was up in my cabin, which was now Pike's cabin, sitting there. I don't know, the same table might be there. Is it, Pike?
Oh, yeah.
Same table, right. So now and that's Harmon. God, good for you, Jim Harmon. And that's Art Wood. Who recognized Art Wood? Yeah. And then Art Wood, unfortunately, is no longer with us, and was one of the really great artist creators at Pilchuck. Went down to what, about 20 years ago? More than 20 years ago. The next slide. Erwin Eisch. Some of you may not know Erwin Eisch. In the beard, really a tremendously talented artist. And Jamie Carpenter on his right, and I won't try to figure out who the rest of them are. Next. But oh, wait a minute. That's exactly where we're sitting. That is the exact spot where we're sitting. This was before we built the lodge in '76, I believe. And that's where we used to eat, right here under, you can see the conditions of that tent, right? The next slide. And we cooked outside right there. That was the quality of the equipment. You notice we had a little leak in that furnace. And I think we did our gathering out of that side at one point. It was easier to gather out of the side of the furnace than the front. Next slide. That was the first hot shop done in 14 days from start to finish when we got here. And we had no electricity, no gas, no telephones, no nothing. So we had we came without any materials. So in 14 days, with 16 people, we built this hot shop. I remember the annealing ovens, which you can see back there. We made them out of cinder blocks, and they worked. So we put something inside of them. But next slide. There wasn't a whole lot of. There's a Buster on the left with the video. We were pretty hip because we were. That's pretty early for the video, right? That might have been 72, but there's that marvering table. See that one I showed you before, right behind him? Isn't that what it is? Was that what that? Yeah, I think that's what it is. And there's Fritz Dreisbach on the right. On the other, let's see. No, that wasn't the second build. Yeah, it was that was built the second year. I think we went from 2 stations to 3 stations on the second year. And by the way, the second year we built a larger shop with a bigger tent. Next slide. My good friend Ilo Skanga, who had brought a great deal to Pilchuck over the years, came on in about 1974. Actually, I think perhaps may have been the faculty person that has taught here or been here in artist residence the most. I'm not sure if that's true, but sure in hell been here a lot of times. There's the start of the lodge that we're sitting in '76. Next. I don't know at what point we were population 49, but
A while ago.
next. Now it's supposed to be 100. And there's John Hauberg, who, along with Annie Hauberg, his then wife, is the one that gave us the 40 acres here. This is sitting right at the end of, what's it called? The coal shop?
Flat shop.
The flat shop. Right at the 15 feet, what's that way? East of the flat shop is where we're sitting. I don't know how much of that big stump is left there, but that was about, well, if I'm wearing a patch, my accident was '76, so it was sometime not long after that. And actually, when he stands up, he's about 1 foot taller than me. Yeah. And he, along with Annie, gave the 40 acres in the middle of what's a kind of more or less a 16,000 acre tree farm. And not only did they give the property, but went on to pick up the budget for the next 10 years. He came to me at the end of the first summer and said, look, I know you had a $2,000 grant. How much more money did you spend than the $2,000? Because he knew I'd spent more than $2,000. And I said, John, I owe the bank $7,500. And that's how much more I spent. And he said, how much you want to do it? What's your budget for next year if you do it again next year? And I said, $25,000. And he said, all right. He said, I'll pay the bank off for you and give you the $25,000. And he did that, and he went on to do that for 10 years, and the budget went up incrementally about the same. And during the time, he formed a board that is now, I know, a really great board that functions well, that pays all the debts, that allows all of us to be here. I think that's it. Thank you very much.